And so it's going to begin to go a little bit live here. I'm also going to kick over to the main intro screen here that people will see. And then we will let people start jumping into the actual stream here.
I like that. It's going to go a little bit live.
Yeah, exactly. Pseudo live, semi live. I'm just hoping the guys aren't going to all be distracted by your friend over there over your left shoulder.
Oh, Ian.
It's all good. On my screen, that's actually with the big Skype window in the background. That's actually all I can see is him. But I see your picture, the actual you, right in the middle. So
when you put it on, yeah.
I think actually I've got him cropped off on the main stream here. Let me just double check. I think, yeah, he's cropped off, so you can't see him anyway. That's all good. All right. So what's your next big thing you guys are kind of thinking about going after?
As far as integrations, or as far as what sort of, we built phase one, and the partners are going to help us with localization. So that's kind of like the thing on the list really is,
nice.
Yeah, how do we help people in specific locations, geographic locations that maybe do something slightly differently. You know, everyone around the world, a door is a door,
right?
And it's but there's sometimes different terminology used, different information required. So yeah, localization is a big key thing.
Absolutely. Well, that's cool. So you're working on the big localization tasks, major task right now. That's kind of what the big push is.
There's about 10 different big pushes.
As always, as per usual in dev.
Yeah, I've got a great team, and they are so rapidly developing things that it's really exciting. It's a complete difference. You know, previously being involved in technology where the technology was lagging the ideas so much, where you have a great idea from a customer and you can't get it implemented for sometimes 6 months, a year, and sometimes never. We've totally turned that around and said, if you've got a great idea, if it actually adds value to the product and for other customers, we now, because of cloud-based technology and because of the rapid development we're on, we can get it in the product within a few days. That's not promising. We're not live yet. But.
Well, yeah, but still, that's pretty. I mean, that's a good turnaround. I mean, even just being agile enough to be weeks, a couple of weeks, that's still very agile.
It's huge. Yeah, it's huge. So,
all right, well,
yeah.
It's noon here Central Time. Let's kick this thing off. So give me a second. We'll do a little bit of silence, and then we'll jump in.
Okay.
Welcome, everybody, to another BIM broadcast. My name is Shawn, Technical Evangelist at CAD Technology Center. That's my day job. But today, we're talking about some planning processes. We're going to talk about BIM execution planning and the like. And we're going to be joined today by our guest, Clive Jordan from LOD Planner. Clive, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Shawn. How's it going?
It's going fantastic, man. It's good to hear from you again. I know we tried this show once before with you, and due to a number of technical difficulties, that show just didn't get a lot of views. We wanted to try to get you back on the show and talk about some of the new exciting stuff and introduce the world to LOD Planner in the first place, what it can do, and kind of talk about some of the new exciting stuff that's going on as well. Before we
see me this time. You can see me this time. Last time it was just audio.
Yeah, exactly. Now we can see you, we can hear you. It's all good. So. Let's kind of start from where we started last time. Let's give a quick introduction into who is Clive Jordan and kind of how you got to where you are right now. So how did you kind of get started in doing what you're doing?
Sure. Yeah, I'll try and keep it short. But the AECO industry, I was fortunate enough to start in engineering. So 5 years in engineering, doing a civil engineering degree and master's. Then interned as an architect, so I had some opportunity to kind of test the waters there, dip my toe in the water there. 6 years as a contractor, and then 3 years in an owner's shoes implementing. And every single one of those was related in some way to the design and construction workflow with BIM, using BIM.
Right.
And shimmied in between, had 10 years in developing software for the industry as well. So at my core is this concept of lean. How do we optimize things?
Right.
And for our industry, optimizing with some technology that really enhances the workflow, enhances communication, minimizes the risk for teams. That's always been the focus. And so that whole combination of understanding the space from a use and also from a technology perspective, we've come to solve this problem that's been bugging me for about 15 years, and that's why I'm here as creating this product and helping our industry plan better BIM.
Excellent. Now let's talk a little bit about. So you said you were in development, doing some software a little bit before you were doing what you're doing now. Who were you with before doing some development?
I was fortunate enough to be one of the founding team members at Vico
Nice.
Software. So
yeah,
we started in the Graphisoft days in the R&D side at Graphisoft, and then the Nemetschek acquisition, we went off and became Vico, and and then involvement at Trimble as well. So I spent 2 years working with a great team at Trimble as well. So really been fun kind of experience in that space before, but it's good to be back.
So construction planning and commissioning and the world of AECO, that's at your core all the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So what have you kind of seen as sort of a trend? Now let's kind of transition this over to the planning side a bit. What have you seen as a trend in this whole time of you working in construction and design and all that? What have you seen as a trend for companies trying to figure out what they're going to do and how they're going to document and the types of software they're going to use? What have people done before?
As far as planning for BIM?
As far as planning for, yeah, like the discussion process here. Apparently my camera is still going to screw up on me. I thought I had that fixed. As far as that planning, as far as discussion in early stages, like how do they communicate to each other? What design software? Who's going to do what tasks? Things like how does that happen now? Or how has it happened in the past before your tool set kind of came into the picture?
Sure, yeah. So like many industries, we gravitate towards the tools that are available because they help us to solve a problem, but it's usually been Word and Excel and these disconnected PowerPoint and PDFs. And so we saw this as being one of the major challenges in putting together these documents. A lot of teams around the world have done fantastic jobs creating guidelines and best practices and specifications and templates and all of this in an effort to create better BIM plans. And all we've done is listen to all of the grumbles about how it's difficult using those processes and using those tools and put it into a simple platform to make that easy.
Right. So this whole planning concept, I mean, really, it's not a new concept. It's just something that, unfortunately, has been very manual and very tedious. And I mean, it's the same thing we used to do on paper, but now it's digital, but it's still very manual.
Yeah, it's been one of those things that tends to then be a copy and paste from one project to another because it's so challenging to make updates. And so, yeah, there's been a lot of confusion and a lot of different views. And one of the things when we were in the Vico days was we created this original concept of this LOD concept. And it's been adapted and adopted and become, put in speech marks, but a worldwide standard in some way, because of it being, is it level of detail, level of definition, level of development? There's a huge kind of confusion around all of those. And when we created the original concept, we didn't create it in the way that it's now being used. And so that's been a fun kind of situation where we've been going around and just asking people what's been the challenge. And one of the biggest things that's come back from that is the flexibility. Trying to implement a rigid standard on a project that is completely different to project A versus project B, and that's really been something we've been able to do with the technology, is add the flexibility that's been required.
Right. So let's take a little bit of a look here at some of what I think many of us identify as BIM execution planning or execution planning in general. I'm going to jump over to kind of showing my my desktop here. I've got a website pulled up. This is the Penn State guidelines, kind of what many of us, when we think BIM execution plan, we think the Penn State standards, the guidelines that they kind of came out with. And so I'm sure you guys probably took a look at this as well, or probably had part in developing some of this, I would guess.
So the Penn State guidelines have been around for a long time, and they're excellent as far as helping understand the concept of a BIM use. That's what they really did very well, and that as a concept, it really helps teams to understand why they're creating certain content. And if you our philosophy is that if you are going to create content, then you should have a reason, you should have a customer for that. And collecting all of that around this concept of a BIM use is really, really, that's how we should plan. And so that's been some of the areas where, from the Penn State guidelines, if they have been adopted in projects and implemented in that way, then we've seen some real benefit.
Yeah. And now you also mentioned LOD, right? That concept, level of development, level of design, level of detail. That there's all kinds of different, level of dimension. I don't know, whatever. There's all kinds of different, conclusions to that level of whatever's. So I think this is kind of the one that stands first and foremost in many of our minds now, which is the one that's been sort of refined and authored by the BIMforum.org team. When they come together twice a year and talk about level of development. And they have sort of a standard format and document and whatnot that people can kind of go through. Now this, again, you're talking Word documents, you're talking PowerPoints, you're talking Excel files. This actually is very much a PDF and Excel type workflow. I'm sure. So now let's kind of transition into what LOD Planner is all about. When I first heard your guys' name, the first thing I thought was, oh, BIM Forum stuff digitally. That was my first thought. When someone was like, hey, you got to go talk to them I think we met, 2 years ago or a year ago at Autodesk University. Right. They're like, you got to go look at LOD Planner. They're doing some cool stuff. And I went, great. Walked up, and what you guys showed me was not what I was expecting. It's really cool. So let's talk about what it is you guys actually do. What does LOD Planner do to answer a lot of these problems that you've been seeing that we discussed a little bit ago in industry?
Yeah, so with the BIM Forum and actually being now a member on the team to advise and guide and help that development as well is really key from a technology perspective. But if you are looking to implement current standards, then you can absolutely do that and use the platform without having any deviation from that. But what we found, and as you said, was people had challenges with that, and most of it was related to the flexibility.
Sure.
And so what we've done is we traveled the world for about a year and a half, going around and asking, what is the challenge? Okay, understand that. Let's fix it with technology. Let's make that simple. Let's make that really easy to go through that workflow. And every single one of them, I think if I put them into buckets, there would be about 7 without kind of being able to reel them off. But the top one was the flexibility.
Sure.
So being able to define for the first time, what is a concept of an as-built model? Which elements are required? How much accuracy should you have in the measurement and then the representation? And that combined with that concept of how developed is the model, how reliable is that, how essentially how much information is added, all of those concepts, it's a really complex problem. And what we've tried to do is just simplify the whole workflow. So it's built on everything that all of the industry experts have done so far, and anything that has been a grumble from the industry about that, we've just put it into the platform to make it a framework that allows you to define what you really need, and in order to remove the risk from that whole workflow. So it's not one of the problems that we always kind of joke about is when an owner says, I've seen this BIM thing online, sounds fantastic, and it's going to save me so much money. So therefore, I'm going to ask in my contract to have LOD 500 plus Kobe. and that statement, and it happens. I mean, we joke about it. I actually, after the last year of visiting a lot of teams around the world, I have been very surprised at how often it actually happens. And it's just because, I mean, it sounds, I've even had people say we had a requirement for LOD 600 plus Kobe. And it's that everyone wants to get as good as possible. And without understanding that that's causing a huge amount of confusion, misunderstanding, and then a huge amount of additional work that is never going to be used. So making it easier to specify what is required. So if you want to get fabrication level concrete in a model, but you don't want to model the rebar, we give you the option to remove that. It removes the image. It makes it very crystal clear as to what that is required for. And again, tying it to a BIM use. So exactly, just saying there's a whole bunch of stuff that we need, is why do we need it? so it answers that who, what, when, where, how set of questions that come up.
Exactly. We actually get that. We get the kind of the same thing a lot, or we used to. We get that less frequently now, but we used to get it a lot where someone would call us up and say, "I want to buy BIM." Well, you can't buy BIM. It's not a product. It's a workflow. It's a way of working, right? So, and you can't just have an LOD 300 or 400 or 500 model. It's parts of the model, and people need to understand that. And this actually helps to your tool set helps to very clearly define that. And it's not really defined by one person. That's the thing. That's where that Word document and Excel workflow really, I think, falls short. Is it's not the owner who specifies this. It's not just the contractor, just the architect. It's design teams talking together and working together to get this all planned out. And I think my camera's freaking out again. I think, yeah, good Lord, I got to get that replaced. I think that your software really helps to facilitate the whole team aspect of planning this and organizing who's going to do what and taking responsibility, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So I was always trying in my previous roles in technology to identify who the prime customer was.
Right.
We did that early on with LOD Planner, and every time we said to an owner, what do you think of this? They say, oh, that's perfect, because now I can put all of my standards in here and get exactly what I want and not overpay.
Right.
Okay, great. So is the owner, is that our market? And then we go to an architect and they'd say, oh, this is perfect, because it means now I can be clear in my conversations with the teams and understand exactly when I hand over the responsibility for the light fixtures to the electrical engineer. That's great, perfect. And then you speak with a contractor and they say, we have always had a problem with understanding who models what, so we can really understand what the level of coordination should be. Sometimes it's over modeling, sometimes it's gaps in modeling. Sometimes we need an estimate and we need to pull quantities and this part isn't finished. So there's all that. And then we have the trades as well that say, I want to be able to have input on what my scope is, because when it's dictated to me, it's not useful for me. Right. It causes differences on every project. So we allow that whole set of people's opinions to come together into the one specification and then be contracted for and then be carried out inside of that same application. So it's really, it helps people to own their scope because they're part of specifying it. It really, it transfers instead of it being something like one person that's, as you said, responsible because it's a file-based thing and they sit down and they create a BIM execution plan and maybe it's a copy and paste from something else and they create a scope document that they think is right, but usually they don't have a full understanding of what is important from the people that are really going to use the model at the end of the day. And so having that open platform is really important. Yeah.
That's awesome. Now, I remember from a previous discussion with you that there is some way of templating out your projects. Now, you guys have built-in templates and built-in kind of standard workflows that you can use. And we were kind of talking pre-show a little bit about localizing that, regionalizing this, because different portions of the world have different standards as well. And so that's an effort you're going through. But companies themselves, if they have their own sort of unique workflow, they have the ability to create their own sort of process and standard for how this is going to work within LOD Planner, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you have a standard already, you can simply start copying and pasting to build that into templates that you can then leverage into your projects.
Yeah.
And if something changes, one of the other interesting things, if you change something in your template, because it's not a Word document that is completely disconnected, you can actually have that connection and refresh content section by section as it changes in your standards.
Very nice.
So if you want to then bring that through. But yeah, you can start with a template. We have some content in there as examples. We as a team are not trying to dictate standards. We are providing a framework that has options in the settings to say, I want to choose the way that the UK defines level of definition and level of detail. Right. That's terminology that they use as an umbrella. I want to be able to choose the AIA definition for LOD, or I want to be able to choose the BIM Forum definition of LOD. And there are slight differences. The BIM Forum doesn't recognize LOD 500, but has LOD 350, for example.
Right.
And the AI, so it's different. And so trying to make sure that that's all tied together is one part. But as you said, then there's the localization side. And we literally, I think it was last week, we announced that we're starting some partnerships. And kind of behind the scenes, we've signed a few more, but we've announced a couple of those now.
Nice.
And they're helping us localize in specific regions. So if it's language localization or if it's a specific way of doing something. But as I said just before we started as well, every country has what we call a door, and maybe we call it something else, but usually it still looks like a door. I haven't been to many places around the world where they don't have doors.
Right.
So how do you make sure that you still have those objects, but allow them to refer to them in different ways? And
exactly.
So an elevator or a lift, they're still the same thing, usually because these companies that build them are worldwide companies, but in different regions we call them different things.
Yep, exactly. So let's talk a little bit about, let's say I'm Joe Architect and I want to get into LOD Planner, or I'm Bob the owner and I want to get in. How do I get access to this? I mean, I'm up here on your website right now, lodplanner.com. And
yep.
Up on the top left, I can see a demo. I got some webinars, and this is new, isn't it? This whole free account thing.
Yeah, we haven't announced it yet. Shh, this isn't live, is it?
Only semi-live. No, it's live. Yeah. So while you're not announcing it, you're soft launching it though, right?
So yeah, we've been really excited. We kind of did the reverse startup, where in order to solve such a complex problem, we asked for people who really cared about solving the problem to invest in the software. And so as we've gone through, instead of like a lot of startups would start with a free product, blast it out in the market, get 1 million users and try and convert them into paid users.
Right.
We've done the reverse. We've said, if you're interested in solving this with us, we'd really love your help. But in order to get there together, we have asked them to commit. Now, we have got through that. We've got the product. It's kind of version 3. It is doing everything that we wanted to solve in the first place and also more. We didn't even have the BIM execution planning piece to it in the early days. It was just it was like, wow, that's another module that really totally makes sense, ties it all together. But now we've got the free, and it gives you a chance to get into the application and start using it. So yeah, and then inside of that free account, we'll also, as people have more and more standards available, it will be a location where you can get access to those standards. So, for example, if there is a publicized standard for a BIM execution planning guide or anything like that, it will be available as a drop-down and referenceable into your project as well.
Perfect. Now, I want to kind of talk a little bit outside the world of BIM. I do have listeners and subscribers who aren't necessarily users of Revit or AutoCAD or other BIM platforms. They've subscribed for other reasons to the channel because of technology advisement and things like that. So in theory, LOD Planner could be used because it's a framework, it's a platform. It could be used for planning anything.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. We had a customer come to us about, I'd say 6 months ago, and they said to us, we need some more licenses. And I was like, okay, but I thought your team was, BIM team, small team, you weren't really, it was going to be slow. And they said, well, we had our contracts team looking over our shoulder as we were using the plan module. Right. And they said, that's awesome. We want to be able to create our structured templates in bite-sized pieces, use each piece differently as we put together contracts for different reasons, whether it's like procuring a chiller or whatever it was in that case, and we want to go through a collaboration commenting, and then we want to approve pieces, and then we want to contract and sign, and it was like that is exactly the product we need. So without knowing it, we've kind of created something that can be useful in other areas as well of the business. Yeah,
that's fantastic. That's pretty awesome.
We're still focused on this specific piece, and we're not going to deviate, but it's interesting every time that somebody applies the technology in another way as well.
Yep. Yeah. It's always fun as a developer. I know at CTC we have the same thing where we develop something and then someone goes and uses this in this very interesting way and uses it outside of its original design, and we're like, well, I'm glad that worked for you that way. That's fantastic. It's just another market we can play with, so that's awesome for you guys. I'm excited about that. So let's kind of let's kind of take this a different route here. You know, I know you guys, you yourself, Clive, you've been in the world of BIM for a while. You've kind of talked about that a bit. What in the world of BIM really gets you excited? What right now, besides LOD Planner, maybe including LOD Planner, what is getting you just like riled up in the morning? You're like, man, this is really cool about building information modeling or the AECO industry.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's kind of 110% of my time at the moment. But
right.
obviously, yeah, a lot of other things. There's some fantastic stuff as far as using the model for other purposes and all of the AR, VR, MR, you know, all the reality side of things, trying to, instead of have to open a model inside of an application, making it more accessible for people. And that is huge from the design process and being able to understand the space before you're in the space. That, you know, and that's been around for a long while as well, but you know, there's a lot more about it. There's a lot more hardware and software supporting it. So that's great. But for us specifically as well, it's about aggregating knowledge so that we can make that workflow more streamlined. There's a huge number of different things that we've got a list of integrations, like 25 different integrations and technology partners that we're talking with. But it's helping prioritize that for the users rather than just, you know, whatever the next shiny thing is. So there's a lot of useful things that might make sense in a 5-year, 10-year period, but we're really focused on how to solve problems today and make it valuable for users today.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's some cool stuff happening, definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah. I like the fact also that everything's just becoming, I mean, you've been saying it's more accessible. There's more hardware to support it. So everything's becoming much more mainstream now. So, you know, we have this sort of influx of the technology where it's been there. Like you said, we've had AR, VR for a while, but now it's in our face, on our face. It's on the client's face.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's a huge number of companies as well, early stage startup companies on the generative design side as well.
Oh yeah.
So that's a really interesting space as well, and hooking into that is also interesting for us. So there's some cool stuff happening in our space. It again though is, you know, we've got to remind ourselves. And so I spent 6 years as a contractor, and when I go back to sites today, there isn't a huge gap between that and when I was on sites 15 years ago.
Right.
There's more iPads, but we've got to understand, you know, the teams that we're working with and focus on the user and make their life easier and make it so simple that it's just a complete no-brainer, that it makes sense to do it that way rather than the more difficult way.
Absolutely. Okay, now I'm going to take another tack here, and I did not pre-prep you on this call beforehand that I was going to do this. I did last time.
Okay.
But every time I bring a guest on, I like to give them sort of a 2-minute soapbox to talk about whatever's on their mind, you know, whatever's bugging them about BIM or whatever, or, you know, hey, I hate it when I go out and walk my dog and people don't pick up after theirs, or whatever the topic is.
Okay.
So 2-minute soapbox on the spot. Clive, ready to go.
Okay, I'm gonna use it just for LOD Planner, and this is completely selfish, but
perfect.
The reason behind it is that we in our industry have got a complete divide. Some people, it's like Marmite or Vegemite that some people say. You either love it or you hate it. And when you use the term LOD, there's some people that absolutely love it or are becoming aware of the need for planning. And there's some people that have tried it and they've said, oh, that doesn't work. And I absolutely understand why. You know, we've got 7 major categories of the reasons why it hasn't worked in the past.
Right.
And we have solved every single one of them and more. And there's still some challenges that we have on the list that we need to solve. But in order to be able to create the right model at the right time by the right people, it has to be for the right reasons. And so tying together that plan, the detail that's required to the customer, and having an easy way of doing that, that's what we're focused on. And so it's kind of like a call to anybody that has tried or anybody that has had maybe a poor experience with planning using a fixed structure before.
Right.
let it have another chance, because it'd be pretty interesting, I think, for you. But off of that soapbox and putting my, I don't know whether I've got 3 seconds left in that segment. But the other one is try something.
Right.
It's try something in general. There are a lot of people that have some great ideas out there, and it's always a challenge to go from the idea into action. It's a scary thing. It's an all-consuming thing. But if you have passion about something, about solving some problem for your industry, whether it's the AEC industry or somewhere else, go and do it. Go and try it. Go and just put yourself in there, because I mean, you can tell the passion I have for what we do, and it is just energizing. I described myself, or people previously described myself as a workaholic, and now I'm kind of redefining that term. But that's the other side of it. Don't lose yourself in it. Don't ignore the rest of your life, your family, your friends, etc. So have a balance, but go and put everything into what you are passionate about.
Yep. I don't remember the exact quote about this, but it's something along the lines: if you don't aim at something, you're gonna hit your target or miss your target every time. You got to aim, you got to try, you got to go for it. You got to, put yourself out there. I love that. That's a fantastic bit of encouragement for all of us out there in the world, BIM community and otherwise. Your passion, go do it, man. Go make a difference somehow, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I like it. Love it. All right, well, Clive, this is about all the time we've got for today. We've been here for about a half hour. I don't want to spend a lot of your time, and I know our listeners don't like shows too much longer than about 30 minutes at most, so we're going to probably cut it off here, and I look forward to seeing where LOD Planner's going. Those of you out there in the world of YouTube, if you try this out, leave us some feedback, hit up the channel, leave us some comments about what you think, and maybe if you have other guests, you're like, hey, talk to this person about this thing. Let us know about that too. We're always interested in bringing on guests to the show that you have an interest in hearing about. So let us know what you think. Feel free to leave us comments on this video, like I said, and we look forward to seeing you in future broadcasts. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Clive, and hope you have a fantastic day and weekend.
Enjoy.
We'll catch you later. Yep.
Bye.